What's up, friends? It is EK back with another hot off the press edition of the Devy Dose. As always, my homie Kyle is here. What's up, Kyle?
Nothing much. Just so excited to talk about the Big Ten.
You're very soft-spoken tonight. Are you sad about the Big Ten?
I'm sad about the Pac-12, actually.
I am
that's
too.
where my sadness originates. We can hold a little
Yeah.
funeral here on the Devy Dose for the Pac-12.
Yeah. Yes. Well, should we light a candle?
Rest in peace.
Kyle's a Washington State fan for some reason too.
My father is an alum, so that is why the Washington State connection.
For some weird reason.
I was born there. Okay. Basically.
I like Washington State too. I do. But yeah,
it's tough to see a Washington State team that's been competitive in the revenue sports, at least football. They've been decent at basketball, just get left behind. And now there's this report that there was a Pac-12 official, or not an official, but a Pac-12 team AD who called a Big 12 official the other night and was like, "Hey, can you take all of us except for Oregon State and Washington State?"
Oh,
it's
really?
like, oh my God, you really hate us that much?
That's hilarious. To be fair, they are like the redheaded stepchildren of the Pac-12, like Oregon State specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're competitive in football. Both teams are right now.
I mean, Oregon State should be right. Last year it was pretty bad.
Last year they ended the season ranked. They were strong last year.
All right. Well, they were boring for CFF and for Devy.
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
True, and they've been boring for a number of years, but they played good defense last year.
The quarterback, but then he transferred to TCU. That was like the Chandler Morris, right?
But you know the name of the quarterback this year.
Oh no, Nolan.
Chance Nolan. But you know the name of the quarterback this year. It's very fun.
I do.
But yeah, I mean, I get it. Like Washington State's in the middle of freaking nowhere. It's like an hour of farmland in any direction, but come on, please.
Yeah. So our theory is that the ACC is going to have to soak this up, or they're going to have to merge with the Mountain West. I think are the two ways that we could both kind of had independently came to the same ideas of this happening.
I think Stanford
or maybe some Ivy combination League. Of it, you know.
I think Stanford should join the Ivy League.
They always feel like a border, they're like the West Coast Ivy League's cool, right? But they're just like that.
UC Berkeley can too, actually. Get them both in the Ivy League, and then Washington State can go to the SEC. I think they're more SEC material than Missouri.
Interesting.
See, they're in the southeastern part of Washington, so.
I think you might be a cohort of one that thinks that. It's a good idea.
I saw somebody make that joke on Twitter, and they took the United States map and flipped it upside down so that Washington was in the very southeast corner. And was like, Washington State's more southeast than anybody.
That's pretty funny. Good humor, dad jokes. It's what you guys come here for, right?
Yeah, they were looking at that Australian map.
So we're in the Big Ten. We're excited. There's some teams to talk about. I mean, mostly it's like Ohio State and everyone else when we're talking about Devy and CFF. But there's still some fun players on these other teams.
I think Penn State's getting there in terms of teams we need to talk about with Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State was a few years ago, and I think they're kind of back, right? Frankly,
I think Devy-wise, they have just as good a quarterback and just as good a running back as Ohio State, if not better. So
true, it's the wide receiver room that
exactly
really is just a
Nobody
world of
matches up to
difference.
Ohio State in terms of wide receiver rooms right now.
I like Singleton more than Henderson. I don't know if it's Henderson's
me
been
too.
hurt too. Those
Me too.
might be some recency bias, but Henderson's he was great. He was really good his freshman year, but I just think last year, even when he was on the field, he wasn't awesome. And I think Singleton has maybe some more upside at this point.
And we'll get there, but we're not going to start there.
We're not going to start there. We're going to start with Michigan, the reigning Big Ten champs, right? And CF college playoff team this past year.
Tied for third last year.
Tied for third. Right. A good squad. Always a little bit tough for CFF outside of the running backs, but always with some Devy talent. Just not necessarily the fireworks you want for fantasy football due to what's traditionally been a little bit more of a run the ball up the gut and wear them down type offense. But there's some guys here, right? Quarterback, JJ McCarthy. I'm a pretty big fan of. I don't think he's a first rounder unless he makes serious strides this year, but I could see that happening. I think in traits, he's really good, intermediate, short area accuracy. I think he's got really nice like awareness in the backfield and pocket mobility. I love that. He can throw on the run. I think personally, that's one of the traits that I think really translates well to the next level is having that, the feel in the pocket. So I could see him taking a step, last year watching film, my knock was his deep ball was a little bit rough, but he had some good deep balls in that last game against TCU. So maybe he takes another stride and we're talking about him as, the number 28 overall pick or 29 overall pick. Right now, I think if you drafted this class today, I think he's a second rounder, which still isn't, much to sneeze about. Definitely a day 2 guy, not a day 3 guy. For CFF though, he's just kind of man, I think he was I wrote down somewhere. I did not, but he was like 17 points a game last year in our born and raised league that we kind of use as our league of record for this podcast. He runs a little bit, but doesn't have the consistent enough passing volume that really want to start him on a week-to-week basis. And I don't see that changing. I had an idea that they started to throw more towards the end of last year, and then I went and looked at the game logs, and it was not true. It was a fake idea. They actually ran the ball slightly more last year than they did the before when they were playing Cade McNamara. The last 3 games last year, he was averaging under 20 pass attempts, and they were just running the ball. And I think that's who they want to be, wide receiver. There's some guys, right? I was talking to Kyle about Cornelius Johnson. A lot of the Devy Watch guys liked him last year coming into the season as a guy that would maybe break out and kind of follow that like Donovan Peoples-Jones, Nico Collins type path. And I could see that happening. I mean, he had that one game, against Ohio State, right? That he just went freaking nuclear last year. But he's a big guy. He has some speed. Has the ability to win routes, physicality at the top of the route. I could really see. Go ahead.
I realized I was on mute and I was trying to interject about JJ McCarthy about a minute ago.
No, I wasn't just ignoring you and talking over you, although that would be funny for me to do.
JJ McCarthy was a 20.5 points per game fantasy scorer last year.
In born and raised?
Yeah. That makes him the QB 26 among guys who are returning. I just looked
at this. Maybe I was in a different league, but I thought he was 17.5. and I feel like I opened it up on the first page and it said what you just said. And then when I did this, it was worse.
Why are there like 3
But it's
different
not actually
fantasy
telling
points
me
per
there.
games? This one says 18.2. I bet one of these includes the bowl game and one of these doesn't, but I don't know which one does. Either way, I
yeah, I mean,
like
20.
JJ McCarthy quite a bit, actually, especially for Devy. I think there's a lot of ability there, even if it's not necessarily highlighted in this offense. I mean, he's a guy who's highly recruited, has that ability to make some off-platform throws, pretty athletic. I mean, I think the NFL is going to talk themselves into JJ McCarthy. I think they already kind of are. I think guys like Brugler are decently high on JJ McCarthy, if I remember right.
Do you like day 2 pick right now? If like we drafted today, or do you think he's already a second half of the first round guy?
It's tough to tell with this class. I mean, there's so many guys there's so many quarterbacks I would put it in round 2 right now.
Yeah.
In this class.
Penix,
like Bo Nix, Michael Penix.
Group,
yeah.
Right?
I tend to gravitate towards McCarthy more because those guys are like 5th-year seniors and McCarthy is a true junior.
Right.
So I like that quite a bit about him. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty accurate last year. I want to say, 64.6%, 22-5 touchdown to interception ratio. Obviously, that's easier to do when you have a dominant rushing attack and you have a dominant offensive line, right? It really helps in not making bad plays.
I did find it. He Dane Brugler from The Athletic projected him to go number 15 in his early mock draft, and Todd McShay has him going 20th.
Interesting.
I mean, he completed 65% of his passes last year. Like, he was accurate, made the throws. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Harbaugh is willing to give him a little more of a leash, just to let him try to impress scouts, but I don't know. It's tough.
Well, I mean, scouts like winning quarterbacks, and he'll certainly get a chance to shine at the combine, right? That sort of thing. Pro Day, which might be really where like we get the most information from the NFL about who they think he is, right? It's during actual draft season. But yeah, I mean, like he's got the makeup of a NFL quarterback in terms of accuracy. 8.4 yards per attempt is good. Obviously, the volume is low. And like I said, he's been in like what I think is a very favorable circumstance, despite not having superstar wide receivers. Like, gets pretty good protection. Usually often playing from ahead kind of makes your life easier when you're not trying to throw the ball 40 times to catch up. But I don't have that many knocks on him. Deep accuracy was like the one thing in my film session last year that's live on the channel. If anyone wants to watch it, that I thought he needed to improve on. But can you improve on that? Like, sure. I
mean, he has the arm.
Yeah. I didn't think he had like crazy arm strength. I thought he was pretty accurate though.
I think he has enough.
Yeah, enough. Right. Yeah, he ain't gonna win any competitions. But yeah, got it done on intermediate passes, some crosshatch stuff that I saw. So, right. Anything else in McCarthy?
No. Let's talk about who he's throwing it to.
Yeah. So Cornelius Johnson, as I was saying, is probably the wide receiver 1 here, unless one of the young guys really makes a huge jump. I mean, he was like kind of the wide receiver 1 2 years ago when Ronnie Bell wasn't in, but Bell really got the bulk of the work last year. I think Bell was an 800-yard guy, like 60 catches, 800 yards, something like that. Johnson was like a lower volume downfield threat, which he still might be this year. But we could see him getting more work. The other vet there that's pretty much locked in as a starter is Roman Wilson, who was not a high volume guy last year, did go crazy in that game against TCU. It was like 104 yards, 5 catches, but that was the first time he had 5 catches all year. So tough for me to get too excited about Roman Wilson. The most interesting guys to me there are really the 2 freshmen from last year that'll be true sophomores. Neither one of them broke their year 1-0, so we're going to be a little wary about them for Devy purposes, but they could certainly, still have some late round upside if they do have some success this year. And they could have some CFF upside in as much as any Michigan receiver has CFF upside. But Tyler Morris, I liked a lot. He was kind of a borderline 5-star guy, depending on where you were looking. Super athletic, like that athletic slot profile. But he's gotten a ton of hype this year during spring camp. I've seen some beat writers posit that he might push Roman Wilson to the outside because he's the superior slot weapon. And then there was Darius Clemens, who got a ton of camp hype last year, got camp hype again this year, and is widely projected to be the 3rd starter. I'm more interested in those guys than I am in Roman Wilson, certainly for Devy and probably for CFF. Although, I think if you're relying on any of these guys as CFF starters, you're probably trying to get a good draft pick next year. I just don't see them being that kind of player. Running back, obviously, the strong point for CFF, for fantasy football. Blake Corum last year was a beast. Before he got hurt, 23.1 points per game, 1,400 yards, 18 touchdowns. He did get hurt late in the year, but he is cleared for fall camp, which is good news if you are a Corum bag holder. The question is this more of a timeshare this year? Can you not hear me?
No, I'm saying I am the Corum bag holder.
Oh, I thought you were tapping the ear like. Yeah, I've got some Corum shares as well. Not an overwhelming amount, but I have been higher on him for Devy than some people, but the NFL doesn't seem to be drooling over him. He kind of like gets mocked at that early day free, at all. Doesn't often get included in, the top 100 mocks, which is usually what people are doing. It's way early mocks. Donovan Edwards might be the more valuable Devy asset. Certainly has more of a conventional workhorse size, has the pass catching profile, even if Corum is the better inside rusher, which I think he is. I think Corum might be the better runner of the two. We know the NFL is looking for the all-purpose weapon out of the backfield, and that's Donovan Edwards. So I think they both get drafted this year. I think Edwards gets drafted higher, gets drafted before Corum. And I think Edwards has a good shot at round 3, something like that. He could go back to school. I don't know. What do you think? I think he goes back.
I doubt it. I think I would imagine they both go. I think Corum is a round 3 guy, and I think it'd be tough for him to get higher, but I think it'd also be tough for him to go lower than round 3.
I feel like this
he
is
just
the time
feels
of
like
year.
The perfect round 3 running back.
I hear you. I think this is the time of year where we have like 15 running backs that are going to go as top 90 picks, right? And then as we get a little closer to the draft, I also think that talent-wise, he is a day 2 pick. I think that, but I don't see a lot of other people that think that. People say he's too small. I'm like, you're like 205, man, like stocky, right? Like maybe even 208. Like that's big enough, man. I just and I do think he separates himself. He can work as a pass catcher. He is very fast. He can make people miss him in the open field, and he's like hit the hole hard and fast quick decision maker at running back, right? So I think he's a good running back. I don't think he'll be an astounding NFL running back, but I think he's competent, right? So it does hearten me to say that. To hear you say that you think he's a day 3 guy, but also that might be influenced by your number of Blake Corum shares.
Is he not better than Tank Bigsby?
I
think he's better than Tank Bigsby.
Was a day 3 guy. It was a day 2 guy, honestly, until the NFL did. But yeah. Looking at the tape, it's a little bit tough though, right? Because Corum has a lot of tape of him blasting through wide open holes and getting 2 yards before contact, and then hitting guys with speed and power behind him, right? Whereas Bigsby tape is full of him making guys miss in the backfield or like shrugging off a tackle to get 1.5 yards, right? It's just really tough it's not apples to apples with the two of them, right?
Sure.
But anyway, so that's what I got on the running backs there. Backups are going to be Khalil Mullings and CJ Stokes. They have 2 interesting freshmen, but they're not likely to see a lot of playing time this year. Some beats think Cabana will make the team. Cole Cabana, who's their like high 4-star. He's like RB 18 or something in the league, RB 30. He's like not really. He doesn't really profile as like a workhorse NFL guy. He's like 180
tiny.
pounds at 6 foot. Yeah, so
exactly.
He's not interesting for me for Devy. I prefer Benjamin Hall, but prefer in as much as he looks kind of like God, I want to say Hassan Hall, but that's not the guy. Who was the last Michigan running back?
Hassan Haskins.
Hassan Haskins. He reminds me of that, right? Like a good college running back, super productive for CFF. Day 3 NFL running back. I mean, who knows? We've seen Benjamin Hall only play a little bit, but he was the star of the spring game. Was blasting dudes in that game. Workhorse size as an 18-year-old. I mean, I love that. If the guy can catch a couple of passes, maybe he could be a Devy asset too. But at this point, they'll remain to be seen, and I don't expect to see him on the field this year unless some people get injured. But I'm not really interested in Mullings or Stokes.
My issue with those two is I think they both get recruited over.
You think they bring in a 5-star next year or something?
I mean, they have Jordan Marshall committed next year, who's 5'10", 193. He's like the RB 10-ish. I think he's better than both of them.
But he takes Cabana's job, not Hall's job.
I mean, 5'10", 193 is decently stocky for a high schooler.
I guess for a junior, yeah, right. Probably puts on some more weight, gets closer to 200 as he graduates.
Yeah.
We shall see. I don't know. Wouldn't be the first time the lower recruited guy keeps a job, right? I mean,
that's true
all the time.
And I do actually like CJ Stokes a little bit. I mean, as a true freshman last year, he had 273 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that's something. I believe he's the one who's like really fast, right? He's 5'10", 170, and up to 190 now actually, and just super fast. So I think he's an interesting player, especially because he'll have a year on Cabana and Hall. Like if both of these guys go pro, he can be the next kind of Edwards type.
Yeah, the takeaway might be not Cole Cabana here.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the takeaway. And
I got like
the more I think about it, the more I think about it, I think the takeaway might be a transfer next year.
Could be. Hall was good in the spring game, though, man. He was playing against first-team defense and running for like 5.5 a clip, dude. Like, I could be good. I have a ton of shares of them because his cost has been so low. You can get him in like the 8th round, 9th round, 10th round of supplementals that I've been taking him late everywhere just because why the hell not? What if he is the next Michigan running back, right? If he's not, whatever, he's an easy cut in 2024. And if he is, then you got a really valuable CFF asset at least.
Sure. I like that.
I don't want to spend.
I think that's good strategy.
I like that. But Colston Loveland. I've seen described as a top 5 Devy tight end. He was almost 11 points per game last year as a backup, the third string guy, really. And I don't know. He was available in most supplementals. I seem to miss the timing on him, despite having him kind of on my list. I always was taking Jalen Conyers over him, or some other guys if I wanted a real Devy tight end. So I seem to miss the window on him all the time, but guys love him. You got anything on Loveland? Did you watch him play at all?
He's 6'5", 237. I mean, that's good size. It's impressive to have that kind of statistics as a true freshman, correct?
Yeah. And I mean, I think he probably contributes to Eric All transferring out, right?
Yeah,
his ascension.
exactly.
And honestly, watching last year, I thought Eric All was better than Luke Schoonmaker.
Yeah. I think Schoonmaker's overrated just in general.
Yeah. And I there's some all highlights where he was like blasting down the seam, barreling guys over, and I was like, oh, he could be a thing, But
we'll get to it later, but I think All's better than Lachi. We'll get to it next episode, but
it is. I don't, but there's a basis for argument. I mean, I wanted to get some backup for my Lachi shares because I was a little bit afraid of like a true timeshare at least, right? Which would suck if you're depending on him as a CFF guy. But all right, that's enough of talking about Michigan. We never need to talk about Michigan for 25 minutes ever again.
Oh, I mean, I think this is exactly the team to talk about for 25 minutes in this conference, as long as we give Ohio State 35, which I think we will. But before that, we'll give first of all, I'll give you a second to tell me why I'm wrong on these rankings and to break the tie between Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards.
For Devy, Edwards.
All right. What about everyone else here?
Honestly, I like them all. I wonder if we're low on Loveland. But I guess
for Devy,
my hesitation on Loveland for CFF is that they do have the other kid, AJ Barner. And I wonder if they're going to like heavily work that 2 tight end system like they did last year. Which really made it so like All and Schoonmaker both had boom games, but were really inconsistent. So I kind of think you're right where he is.
But yeah, I expect him to do that. And then my issue is just like Dalvin Smith and RJ Maryland are wide receivers,
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I like all of this. I think you're aggressive on JJ McCarthy for Devy, but I think I'm with you. I feel like we're both higher than consensus on him, but I mean, I watched the film. I like it. There's nothing I don't like in his profile.
I'm going to be honest with you. I have him higher than that on my own personal rankings. I have him above Jackson Arnold.
I don't think that's crazy. I mean, look, I have a principle in C2C where like you should probably take the guy that's already done it ahead of the kid that you think might do it. You know what I mean? The problem with that is you're kind of trading upside for floor, right? Like you're not going to get Jamar Chase chasing second and third year guys. You're going to get him chasing freshmen, but you get a hell of a lot of like NFL prospects getting the guys that have already done it that are undervalued. So
you want to put JJ McCarthy above Arch? Because I want to.
I would take JJ McCarthy above Arch personally. Yes. I don't think Arch Manning is that great right now. I think he's got the pedigree, but
quite anti-Arch.
I mean, I liked JJ McCarthy's freshman film better than I liked Arch, just didn't you?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, what you got for us? Kyle?
Okay, we spent 30 minutes on Michigan. We're going to spend 30 seconds on Northwestern right now. First of all, screw everyone involved in that scandal. That sucks. That's stupid, and it doesn't belong here. It doesn't belong anywhere.
Yeah, it was like some grimy hazing stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they fired the head coach. They had just brought in a new DC this year. He was the former North Dakota State DC. That's David Braun, and they promoted him to interim head coach. It doesn't seem like they have a ton of plans to not let him coach this season completely. So I think he'll be the head coach. So like a new staff, but like kind of new, kind of not. I don't know. I think they're going to suck. They're probably going to go 0-12. I don't know if they play like a school for the blind, then they might be 1-11. But I think they're going to be absolutely horrible. Just for some names for you guys, just because we are talking about these teams, and we've talked about, some pretty shitty G5 teams. So I'll give you the names of players at Northwestern, just so you know who they are. Cincinnati transfer quarterback Ben Bryant is there. He is probably going to have the quarterback job. He sucked at Cincinnati. He'll probably suck at Northwestern. I'm not excited for him at all, especially with like zero offensive line. Bryce Kurtz and Jacob Gill are the returning starters at wide receiver. They exist, and they are, some of the wide receivers who play football at the college level. Good for them. That makes them better than almost everyone else, except for the ones that are actually good in college football. And then at running back, I think Cam Porter is going to be the starter. There was some hype around Porter last offseason. There was like some people who thought he would take more of the job from Evan Hull.
He was supposed to be the starter.
Yeah.
Evan Hull did well when Porter was hurt the year before.
Yeah.
And Porter couldn't take the job back from Hull because Hull is good.
Yeah, exactly. Hull is good. I don't think Porter is. Last season, he averaged like 3 yards a carry, 286 yards on 87 carries, just 2 touchdowns, 7 receptions for 50 yards. I don't think he's near the receiver that Hull is. He is 5'10", 220, which is good size, but I'm just not excited for Cam Porter at all. I think you can make the case that he's going to have volume.
Obscene volume.
Are they even going to try to run the ball down 30 points every week? I don't know.
Are they going to throw it? I mean,
Ben Bryant's going to stand back there and get sacked is what's going to happen.
So I've got a proposition for you. Kick Northwestern out of the Big Ten. Put Washington State in there.
Deal.
So I'm done ranking Northwestern players, I think. I think that's all I got.
I don't even think he should be that high. I think he should be below.
I don't think Waylon Jones is good.
No, but I think Sean Dollars could be good. I think Kyrie Robinson's way too low. He's like a 15 points per game story. That's a good question.
I'm going to fix it.
It was definitely me.
I'm going to fix this shit as we go through. How is Cedric Baxter so low?
Because it's CFF. The issue is we have like some guys ranked too low, and like I look at this list and I go, oh, Kyrie Robinson scored 12 points a game last season. That's more than Cedric Baxter will have, and then I put Cedric Baxter there. But like really, Kyrie Robinson should just be a little higher.
Yeah. We gotta do some tweaking, I think. But all right. You want to talk about Northwestern anymore?
No. Please God, no.
Do you want to talk about a different team? Or actually, I got 4, so I guess I should tee off on one of my easy ones, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Iowa. While we're on the subject of crappy college football teams. I'm sorry if anyone's listening to this and you're an Iowa fan, but last year was bad.
I'm very sorry for you.
Apologize to us for putting that on TV.
Spencer Petras is gone, though. Hey, you cannot get worse without Spencer Petras.
That's true. Spencer Putrid.
Yeah.
So, look, like you said, Petrus is gone. In comes Cade McNamara, who we were just talking about, was Michigan's quarterback, right, for a year and a half, 2 years.
Went to the playoff.
Here's his career stats. 63% completion percentage, 7.5 yards per attempt, 21 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. That is like an average to good college quarterback, right? Average to above average, I would say. Like I was saying, obviously playing behind Michigan's line is nice. But that's a massive upgrade for Iowa, right? Like substantial over what they have. Because what they had was really just bad.
Yeah. McNamara is definitely a guy at Michigan where he was like a perfectly good game manager, but Michigan has high aspirations, and JJ McCarthy is the type of guy that can actually win you games rather than just keep you in them. Like
JJ McCarthy brings them to the college football playoffs, right? And like we both agree, he's an NFL guy. Cade McNamara is not. So anyways, I think for Iowa, this is good. The problem is all their wide receivers have transferred out, right? Literally all of them. Like Arlen Bruce was decent. He's gone.
I mean, if I played wide receiver for Brian Ferentz, I would definitely want to not continue doing that.
I think the shocking thing about Iowa is that it's still Ferentz, right? With no coaching staff changes. Just was like, we're not the problem.
Yeah, it's definitely not nepotism at all that Brian Ferentz has the OC
how are you
job.
an AD and you're like, this was a joke, but we're just gonna roll it right back out there? Like that's...
I mean, Kirk's a good enough head coach that you keep him around, but there is no reason his brother should be OC.
Fair. I thought that was a solution for them, right? Because the defense is awesome. You send like half the defense to the NFL every year.
Yeah, exactly. That's where Brian Ferentz is a good coach, but
go get like an OC that can coordinate an offense that belongs in this century, right?
Exactly.
So the bright spot for Iowa is Caleb Johnson, who I think is an NFL talent, at least like a day 3 guy who could be more if he performs like that. He is at the very least big and fast, which is a good starting place when being a running back, right? He's 6'0", 225, and like was reportedly very fast coming in. I don't know, on film, I'd say he's like a 4.5 guy at least, but that's plenty fast. He averaged 5.1 yards a clip on a really bad offense. Took over starting duties halfway through the season for Gavin Williams, who many of us thought was going to be a decent CFF option, if nothing else. So I think this kid gets, he's a 200 plus carry guy. I think he is the definition of a volume pig, if nothing else. Right. But should be able to break some long ones. Iowa's not terrible in the trenches, right? So the problem's always been that they've had no passing offense for the past couple of years, nothing to spread the field out, nothing to stop people from putting 8 in the box in every single play. I don't know if that changes this year just because they have such poor talent on the boundaries. The other strength of the team is obviously the tight end position, where this is just the tight end factory. As we were talking earlier, Michigan transfer Eric All has joined this and is probably the tight end 2 there, although Kyle and others have argued that he could well be a 1B or even the tight end 1. I think that they go with the guy that's been in the system personally. That's like my only argument for Lachie over Eric All. But I also think Lachie's good, man. So when Laporta was out last year, he was averaging 18 points per game. I mean, I don't know. These tight ends go on to the NFL and they get drafted. That's it. That's my expectation for Lachie. I don't have any knock on him. I don't know. Some people seem to be less high on him, but I think that's just on some level trying to differentiate yourself. So that's what I think. The one thing that I pulled out of my research here, which is interesting to me, is the next Iowa tight end is probably Addison Ostranga. I have not heard people talking about him, but he played really well in spring practices. He actually caught more passes in the spring game than any of the other tight ends. Was mentioned first by the beats, which always tells you what they think about him. So he's a guy that I don't know if you need to roster him right now, but it wouldn't be a crazy thing to do to take him in a late round if you want a tight end going into next year. Because All is a senior, probably goes to the NFL. Lachi probably goes to the NFL or comes back and goes to the NFL next year. But Stranga is pretty interesting.
Sounds like a watch list guy and somebody I would add at the end of the season, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. He's that like late season waiver ad, right? For sure. The other interesting name here is probably Caleb Burton, who transferred over from Ohio State, where he was a high 4-star guy, but Iowa released a depth chart on July 26th, and he is not even on the 2 deep. Maybe they just haven't worked him into the system yet. Maybe he wasn't there for spring camp. I think that's part of it, but I guess what I'm saying is I am tempering my expectations for Caleb Burton. Maybe next year he happens, but what you got, Kyle?
I figured out what happened on Fantrax. When you open the players tab now, it defaults to projections, not last year's stats, which is why we were confused about McCarthy.
Yeah, he's 18 points per game in Born and Raised last year. So 22 feels a lot different than 18 to me. 22 is started. Well, 18's like you're not happy about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
All right, you got anything on Iowa? You want to talk about why do you think Eric All is better than Lachi?
I just think he's more athletic. I mean, I think he works better in the seam. But like, I don't know if that's purely like a Devy idea in my mind. Like, either one, if they're going to get 18 points per game, like you said, without Laporta for Lachi last year, that's good enough for CFF. I just don't know which one I'm going to hang my hat on in CFF. But I think I like All more and Devy.
Yeah, I like Lachi more for Devy for sure. But I could see All being a really nice later round tight end for CFF because he's probably cheap, like probably barely gets drafted, and he could be in a 50-50 timeshare, right?
There's some Eric All hype. Although he's still a tight end, so
represent Eric Power. All right. Who do you want to talk about now, Kyle?
I'll move on to Indiana. I think we leave Ohio State for last. Do you agree with me on Caleb Johnson and the Devy side? I didn't rank him for CFF either. If you want to throw him in there.
I like him much more than that for Devy. I think you're crazy.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. Dude, he's 225 and like ran like a track guy in high school. I would put him above Ollie Gordon.
Okay. If he's 225 and runs track speed, I'd have him above Bucky Irving.
Yeah,
I think Bucky Irving's too high. But
hold on, let me you do what you're doing, and I also think you're too low on Lachi for Devy, but we just went over that, so that's fine. We can agree to disagree.
Do you like him more than Loveland?
Yeah, just because he's done it already. You know what I mean? It's my whole theory.
I mean, Loveland has done it. Like 20 receptions as a true freshman?
Yeah, I mean, that's good. You know, I don't know. Iowa, helmet scouting, maybe a little bit. I just don't see Lachi not getting drafted. I think it would be exceedingly I'm currently watching Johnson.
I feel the same way about Loveland. I think he's going to get drafted for sure. But
the early
can move
breakout,
him how you want.
I don't care enough to move him. I cared about moving Caleb Johnson, but that's it.
Okay, just you can rank Caleb Johnson for CFF, and I will start talking about Indiana. I think in terms of under the radar teams, Indiana is my favorite in this conference. This is a team that's led by on offense, their offensive coordinator, Walt Bell, air raid disciple. Absolutely loves to throw the ball around, loves to play fast. I think for CFF, that's something that we need to pay attention to. And just because it didn't work for Indiana last year doesn't mean that it will continue to not work. I think especially because they brought in some good transfers this year. And a lot of guys came back. Like they didn't lose a ton to the draft either. So yeah, that Walt Bell air raid offense threw the ball 57.75% of the time last season. That's good for the 13th best in the country, assuming, throwing the ball the most is the best, which I think it is. And then the crazy thing about Indiana is that they were first in the country in plays per minute. I would think for sure that would have been like Tennessee, but apparently it was Indiana. So they're going to throw the ball around and they're going to play fast. I think that just a lot of 3 and outs made them, not that exciting in terms of plays per minute.
We're to get to that 4th down so fast.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Connor Bazelak was their quarterback last year. We sort of like waxed poetically a little bit about Bazelak earlier in this series, but that's because we were comparing him to guys in the MAC. In terms of a SEC or Big Ten quarterback, he is not that. So I think Indiana makes a big step in the right direction at quarterback. They bring in Taven Jackson, who was a high 4-star recruit last season, who went to Tennessee. He was the QB 12 according to 24/7 in last year's class. He's 6'3", 212. Super athletic, had great physical traits. That was really the thing about him as a recruit, was that just like the physical traits were off the charts. And he makes plays with his legs. He just wasn't like super polished as a passer. Definitely had steps to take there. I would expect that the redshirt year at Tennessee helped that. I tend to think they have a good quarterback coach and a good set of offensive minds to teach quarterbacks. Obviously, those kind of theories haven't really been confirmed yet because they've thrived with transfers.
Penix, right? Penix?
No, I'm talking about Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about the Heupel offense because I'm talking about Taven Jackson. And I think Taven Jackson's a guy who could have gone to better schools in the transfer portal this year. But his brother is Trace Jackson Davis, who is the star player on the Indiana basketball team. And so apparently there was some connection there. His brother kind of showed him Indiana, and he fell in love. So I think he takes a step down just because of that family connection. And I think he's probably the best quarterback that Indiana has had in a while. He's not confirmed to be the starter yet, but I think and everything seems to point that direction. You don't bring in a guy of that caliber and then sit him. So I expect Taven Jackson to lead the way on offense at the quarterback position. In terms of running backs, they bring back 2 guys who were the RB2 and 3 behind Sean Shivers, who is now gone to quote unquote the NFL. He's a training camp body, truly, but he's gone. And one of those guys is Josh Henderson. He is going to be a 5th-year senior this year who transferred in from North Carolina before last year. Last year he had 90 carries, 398 yards, and 4 touchdowns, along with 24 receptions, 274 yards, and 4 touchdowns through the air. At 5'11", 222, it's pretty impressive with that receiving stat line. He can do both things pretty well. I don't think there's anything really for Devy there, but He's probably a good college back. At least he is now. Now that he's a fifth-year senior, probably wasn't as a freshman, but is now kind of one of those guys. And then their other running back that they return is Jalen Lucas. Jalen Lucas was a true freshman last year who found his way onto the field. 49 carries, 271 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 16 receptions, 82 yards through the air. Was fantastic in the return game, was like a Big Ten first team kick returner. And if you're excited for Devy purposes, don't be. Jalen Lucas is 5'9", 166. That is not going to make it in the NFL.
He is a running back that I outweigh by 60 pounds.
He is a wide receiver who happens to play running back at that size, truly. He's a slot wide receiver.
He wouldn't make it in the NFL as a wide receiver.
Yeah. I think he can be like a fun guy in CFF, especially once Josh Henderson is gone next year. I think Lucas could be fun. He could be a guy in the air raid who catches, 40, 50 passes as a junior or a senior. So I think he's a name to watch in the long run. Probably not super excited about either of these guys next year just because they'll split so much of the work.
Yeah.
But at wide receiver in this air raid offense, I am excited about some guys. The first of those is Cam Camper. He came into Indiana last year as the JUCO wide receiver 4 per 24/7 in the 2022 class. So experienced at a lower level of football, came into Indiana and was immediately the wide receiver 1 after just one offseason. I mean, he led the team in targets. He had 82 targets in the first 7 games of the season before he was injured and missed the rest of the season. So you're
talking me into him.
It's ridiculous for anyone to have, 11 targets a game. Unfortunately, those 82 targets were tied to Connor Bazelak's 55% completion percentage. And so they only turned into 45 receptions, 560 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This is a guy who, if this offense is able to improve and, pass for more yards, score more touchdowns, I think Cam Camper will be a big beneficiary of that. And then there are other 2 wideouts who I expect to start and have some interesting qualities. First of which is EJ Williams. He is a transfer in from Clemson. He was a highly rated recruit, a top 150 recruit in the class. Clemson kind of brought in guys like EJ Williams who are 6'3", 190 all the time for a few years, and they were all just all right in terms of Clemson. And but I think moving down to a team like Indiana probably makes him, a lot better in comparison to his peers. So I think EJ Williams will be a starter for Indiana. If this is a good offense, that's something to watch out for. And then the last guy I'm interested in watching is Donovan McCulley. There was some decent Devy CFF hype for Donovan McCulley a couple years back when he came into Indiana as a freshman quarterback. He's 6'5", 210, massive human being, incredibly athletic for his 6'5" size. And then just last year, he switched from quarterback to wide receiver, played wide receiver full-time last year, had 16 receptions, 169 yards, and a touchdown. Not super impressive, of course, but maybe he can take the next step. I mean, this is a guy who's only played wide receiver for 1 season. So Donovan McCulley, the last name to watch. And then not really a tight end I'm interested in here. So that's all I have for Indiana.
So Cam Camper's super interesting for CFF then.
I think so.
Like Jalen Noel interesting?
Yes. Without Hunter Deckers, yes.
Yeah. Right about there. Yeah. Sam Wigletts. Wigletts
has done it.
Yeah. Wow. So after that we got Javon Baker, Ricky White, Jaron Bradley. I'm definitely taking him.
It's like the has done it tier and then like the hasn't done it tier.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
Jalen Noel in the middle, as has done it, but has a crappy
Is
quarterback.
catching passes from a mediocre transfer or a redshirt freshman, right?
A true freshman.
Which is probably the better option, honestly. The transfers. I don't know. The transfer seemed fine. He seemed to get like okay reports. And how old is Cam Camper? Is this like his 4th year or 3rd year?
Tough to tell with JUCO guys.
That changes a lot about whether he gets like ranked for Devy at all.
He is considered a senior going into this year.
So yeah, this is about right then. Tyron Smith range.
Yeah, played 2 seasons at community college, and then last year was a junior.
So do you care to rank EJ Williams or Donovan Coley? I don't.
No, not yet. They have to prove something first.
Yeah, like if the offense goes bonkers, then like we'll watch list them, right? And honestly, I was eyeballing Taven Jackson in drafts early this offseason, but I didn't really know that Indiana had that kind of like aggressive, quick play calling. So I kind of passed him over. It just was like there was no hook for me to draft him. I was like, he's athletic, but like he probably is terrible, So that's very interesting to me that he's got a shot to be the guy in a good offense. So I put him above Malik Hornsby,
Yeah.
Better recruit than Malik Hornsby, same level of athleticism, better system, P5. So, that's where I'm at. All right. Anything else we need to talk about with Indiana?
No, I think you should do your last 2 schools, and then we'll talk about Ohio State
for another hour. All right, we'll try to keep it light on our feet.
We can just do 6 today. I mean, you can do 1 school, and then we'll do Ohio State.
Yeah. Honestly, that's probably what we should do.
Yeah.
I'll save Minnesota. They're kind of fun. We're gonna have a ton of fun schools next time. We'll talk about Illinois, who is probably the other least fun school to talk about here. I don't think they're as bad of a football school. What do you say?
I like Illinois.
I kind of like Illinois, but they're not exciting for Devy, right? I mean, last year, obviously, who was the running back? It was
Chase
awesome.
Brown.
Yeah, Chase Brown was phenomenal, but Chase Brown was always a Devy guy. He was just hurt as a sophomore, and then kind of got on the field as a junior, right? I mean, he was a decent recruit.
I like Illinois. I like Illinois as a football team, not necessarily as a Devy hotbed, but they're just a fun, scrappy football team that stays in games and runs the ball 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
That's about them too, Like they're never going to be near the top of the recruiting chart, but they still make the games like watchable and like have some interesting stuff. So, another school that got a mediocre QB transfer. They got Luke Altmaier coming in, who had lost the starting job at Mississippi to Jackson Dart, who I am also lower on than the Devy community. I don't think either one of them is great. Here was Altmaier's stats from Ole Miss: 47% completion rate, 7.4 yards per attempt. And they took shots, but still, that's pretty rough. So apparently he looked good in the spring game. He threw a couple tutties. I think could be worse. He's a young kid too. Only was his 2nd year last year, I think. So not like he's a 5th year guy. It could happen, right? Who was their quarterback last year? I don't even remember. Do you remember?
That would be
he graduate?
It's the guy who's been at Indiana forever and was always decently interesting, but never actually put it together.
Yeah.
Not Indiana, Illinois.
Yeah,
he was like a
so
seventh-year senior who had like 2 medical red shirts. It was no, that was the year before last. Last year it was Tommy DeVito, the
Tommy
Syracuse
DeVito.
transfer.
Right.
Who wasn't bad. I mean, he
No, he's
completed
fine.
almost
Would he
70%
run out
of
of
his
eligibility?
passes. He must have. He completed 70% of his passes, 15 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Just only had 369 attempts.
Yeah,
really the issue.
Completed 70% of his passes, and 80% of those were 4-yard passes to Isaiah Williams because that's
Or
what
Chase
the
Brown.
offense does. Yeah, Chase Brown. So I mean, I like Isaiah Williams, a wide receiver. I think he's underrated. He's fun for CFF. He's never going to be a 25-point per game guy just because he's like short area, intermediate area. But he's like, you watch his film, he's very elusive, right? And he's got good hands. He's only been playing the position for a couple of years. Came in as a quarterback recruit, I want to say 3 years ago. He's a true senior this year, if I recall correctly. 82 catches, 715 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. I would love to say he's going to exceed that this year. I think he does without Chase Brown, right? I don't think they have like that guy to be the engine of the offense outside of Williams. But I don't think Altmaier is very good. Maybe Altmaier has improved, and this is a good season for Williams. But I don't know. Nonetheless, I like Williams as an NFL guy. Probably not a day 2 guy unless he goes bonkers. I know I say this all the time, but definitely a day 3 guy, and a guy that sticks on a roster, right? Like,
yeah,
he's a guy.
I think Isaiah Williams is more of a Devy guy than he is a CFF guy. He reminds me of like Kadarius Toney in that way.
The difference is that Isaiah Williams has been good in college for 2 years already.
Yeah, good. Not great, but
not great.
But he is that type. He's that type of like Tony-esque prospect in that he's super athletic, super shifty, and will impress scouts at like a Senior Bowl type deal.
Yeah.
But he's not being used in the offense in a way that's like NFL impressive.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair to say. I mean, like some of his data is like decent. Like he gets a decent high market share, right? I don't have my spreadsheets open in front of me, but anyways, I like Isaiah Williams. He's on a ton of my teams. I was hoping he would progress. He's kind of been like flat since his original breakout a couple of years ago, but you could do worse for a flex guy, and yet has some Devy potential. This is a 4-star that came in this year. It was a wide receiver 36 in the class. Not a ton of blue chip prospects at Illinois at the wide receiver position. So he's a guy that, could be a thing. You got other.
Who is that?
His name's Malik Elzy. That's in the show sheet. ELZY, 6'2", 205, 4-star. I didn't know much about him. I didn't have time to watch highlights, but could be a thing. Obviously, the most interesting piece on the recruiting trail this year for Illinois was 4-star Caden Deegan, who is an enormous human being, 6'2", 217, coming out of high school. He was RB12 in this class. And I mean, his film's good, man. He's a destroyer. He's probably going to get bigger than this, and has a little bit of skill as a running back. So he's a guy that I think.
Yeah, just to say how big is really big. 6'3", 240. And early enrollee.
Got it. 240 already. Wow, yeah. He was listed at 217 somewhere, but that must have been like older.
I'm looking at Campus to Canton.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I must have pulled him right off of
240
Sports.
Something very large anyway.
Big dude.
Big
right?
dude.
And
was clocked at 21 miles per hour in high school. Very much Derrick Henry light type player. Love Caden Fegan.
Yeah. I grabbed some shares, and he's he's available in the middle rounds of the supplementals usually, where like he's kind of like the last premium guy that comes off the board. So I love that. I love scooping up the value on that tier of guy. So he's going to feast, but probably more next year. They got a couple of guys playing ahead of him. Reggie Love the third has been my pick for a guy there all along. He was just better than McCray last year, just straight up. But he's a little bit undersized. I know like some of the Devy people like McCray, but I just don't think McCray is very good.
I love Josh McCray.
Why do you love Josh McCray?
He is big, he is athletic, and he is a good runner of the football. I think it's fair to say he had a bad season last year. I think he was injured a lot.
Maybe. He ran for a whopping 2.5 yards per carry. Although I did look at his profile, and I'm like, he's probably punching in a lot of goal line carries that really keep the numbers down.
I mean, he got hurt in the season opener, missed 6 games, played like limited snaps in 2 games, and then got hurt in that second game with limited snaps. Like, I think 2022 is a season you have to throw out. But as a freshman in 2021, he had 549 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, that's an impressive season for a freshman. And he had 142 yards against Penn State and 156 yards against Purdue. Like, he wasn't doing it against bad teams as a freshman.
Yeah, that's fair. It could happen.
It could happen.
Either way, I mean, Love's definitely not a Devy guy. He's small, and he's not like any – I didn't think he's anything miraculous. I just thought I probably liked him better than McCray from watching last year and box score scouting last year. But, hey, if McCray gets back to that freshman year form, he could be a thing for CFF. He could be a thing for Devy even. I mean, still a young player. Honestly, following a kind of similar career arc to his predecessor in terms of a good freshman year, bad injury, and kind of getting back on the field. So,
yeah, he's very similar to Fegan in the fact that he is 6'1", 235, and also fast.
Yeah.
So
big and fast. Great starting point for being
exactly.
And then last year they had a useful tight end. They had Luke Ford. He wasn't a world beater, but he was a guy you could play if you had to. They got a guy named Tip Riemann, who will be their tight end 1 this year. So, Tip, fun name to say. Tip Riemann. All right. That's what I got on Illinois. You got anything else on Illinois?
No, not really. I love big, fast running backs, so I do love Caden Fegan and Josh McCray. But that is it.
And, McCray was like free in most supplementals. So, if he does break out, sweet value.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not – I didn't rank him aggressively for CFF. I think there's a case to be made to rank him aggressively. Chase Brown was a top 10 running back. I don't think there will be a guy who has that type of dominance over the backfield.
Yeah. Just to throw some cold water, not that this means everything, but when I was doing research, multiple beats had, currently from summer, not from spring, had Reggie Love starting over McCray, which, whatever, doesn't mean everything, but
yeah, I think they're different backs.
Yeah.
It's definitely a thunder lightning type thing.
Yeah, I think McCray is going to get all the touchdowns, and I think Love's going to get a lot of carries between the 20s. So just
in that
enough
case,
to –
we should rank him higher than where I have him.
Yeah, I honestly, even though I don't like McCray, I just like looking at the numbers today. I was like, that kid's going to get 10 touchdowns this year, 12 touchdowns. Yeah, I do. So, and if you think he's good, then sweet. He might be a beast, Is it Ohio time?
Ohio State, the evil villain of the Big Ten that everybody loves to hate because they're just so freaking good and they recruit every single good player and they just stockpile all these assets that everyone liked as high schoolers, and then they never get to do anything because they're behind a bunch of other guys who are also really freaking good in high school.
Yeah.
And apparently all their quarterbacks now are going to start one season and then go to the NFL. I don't know. I think this is the year, I believe, where we see, like, is this Ryan Day offense combined with the quarterback recruiting really going to be able to take guys who are high 4 stars, low 5 stars, and just make them sit for 2 years and then turn them into first-round draft picks?
Yeah.
Because, like, we have sort of seen it. Like, C.J. Stroud was a 2-year starter. Who was before that?
C.J. Stroud
Justin Fields was a 2-year starter.
Yeah, but all right, Justin Fields was like a 99 recruit on 247. CJ Stroud was the Elite 11 MVP. What was Kyle McCord? He was just a high 4-star. You know what I mean? Which isn't nothing, but a weaker resume than CJ Stroud by far.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, but yeah. Anyway, if McCord is like able to light the world on fire and go in the first round, there is definitely something to be said about these other guys at Ohio State who are having to sit. I mean, if you want to be a Devin Brown truther and Kyle McCord ends up starting, well, first of all, obviously you want McCord to go get drafted because then that means Devin Brown is starting next year. But it's also like the perfect case study to see if Devin Brown can be a first-round pick after one season starting. So I think this is really interesting what they're doing at quarterback, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And it could be something where they are recruiting 5 stars, making them sit 2 years, and then turning them into NFL quarterbacks. I think like there are still 5-star quarterbacks who would be willing to do that. So, yeah, definitely something to watch. But anyway, yes, we are talking about Kyle McCord. We are talking about Devin Brown. This is currently still technically a battle. They have not named a starting quarterback. It sounds like it's about 80-20 to Kyle McCord. Some people are saying 90-10. McCord's a guy who was supposedly, fighting for the job last year with Stroud. Obviously didn't win the job. But he's a guy with a high football IQ, a quick release, a strong arm. He's not a super athletic quarterback, but he is 6'3", 215, like perfect quarterback size, and kind of makes those anticipatory throws that will make scouts drool. I think McCord is going to be very good in this offense, assuming he starts. And then I think next year Devin Brown will be very good in this offense as well. Devin Brown is a guy who is more dynamic than Kyle McCord. I still wouldn't call him a elite rusher, but he is a good rusher. He makes plays out of the pocket. He throws well off platform. He's a good anticipator. He went to Corner Canyon High School in Draper, Utah, which is the same high school where Zach Wilson and Zach Wilson's younger brother both went and played quarterback at. And in a lot of ways, he kind of reminds me of Zach Wilson in kind of the baseball type arm throwing action, off platform ability. Not quite as athletic, but I do think Devin Brown is a good player as well. I think sometimes I'm able to talk myself into like both these guys being like top 15 Devy quarterbacks, but it's just tough considering the situation and the fact that one of them is not going to start. And then moving on, that is the quarterback situation. Moving on to running back. They have star running back TreVeyon Henderson, who everybody loved going into net last season. Had huge expectations on his shoulder. There were, debates between TreVeyon Henderson and Breece Hall, and there were debates between TreVeyon Henderson and the guy who just went this year, there were some people who had Travion above Bijan. Like, his freshman year was insane. Travion Henderson, as a true freshman at Ohio State, had 1,165 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns, along with 23 receptions, 285 receiving yards. And he was doing that with like 4.38 yards after contact per attempt. I mean, he was just very strong as a freshman, just an incredible running back. And then as a sophomore, he, dealt with some injuries. He let some other guys, kind of take some of his lunch. Maybe not like the ham sandwich, but like his Cheez-Its got taken away. His, his sides.
He lost the Jello pudding cup.
Lost the Jello pudding cut to one of Mayan Williams. So yeah, last season, Travion Henderson, 576 yards, 6 touchdowns, just 8 games. So not like, I wouldn't call that a death null. I would call that a death null if it was, a 12-game perfectly healthy season. But I think there's definitely ability for Travion Henderson to bounce back. I do think he's a good running back. I'm not excited for him in CFF at all. I still think
I think it's a work share, right? It's going to be a timeshare.
I think it's going to be.
Mayan Williams, also very good.
At least a 3 running back timeshare, if not 4, if not 5.
Right.
They have the deepest running back room in the NCAA. I do think, despite him probably not producing this year, I do think he is a locked in top 4 running back in the class, probably top 2 in terms of Devy. But like we mentioned, Mayan Williams, took Travion Henderson's Jello Cup last season. He wasn't a highly rated recruit like Travion Henderson or anybody else in this room. He was, I believe, a 3-star, but he absolutely proved himself last year. He's a great pure rusher of the football. He just bounces off people. I know a lot of our friends in the Devy space call him a bowling ball with legs. I think it's a fair observation for Mayan Williams' style of play. He's a guy who's going to get you like 6-7 yards a carry. And he's going to do that by getting like 4 and 8 yard gains. He's not a home run hitter to get that to 7 yards a carry. Like, his long last season was 71, but I think after that, his second longest rush was like 30 yards. So he's not the type of guy to like get in open space and take off, but he is the type of guy to just gain consistent yardage and just pound defenses to death. Which, is kind of the perfect complement to Travion Henderson. So it does make sense that both these guys are playing a lot. Last season, Mayan Williams had 125 carries, 817 yards, and 13 touchdowns in just 10 games. A yards per carry mark of 6.5 there. In 2021, his yards per carry was 7.1. He gets a ton of yards after contact. He's just a strong rusher overall. Not involved in the passing game, but just a solid player. I think Devy-wise, I'd expect him to be in the NFL, to probably be part of a timeshare, but definitely not going to be a guy who, is a world beater at the NFL level. And then they have 2 running backs behind those guys who are both super highly rated recruits. Well, both highly rated recruits. And both had, decent true freshman seasons. Dallin Hayden is the guy who was a true freshman last year. He was the RB19 in his class. He is 5'10", 205. Last season, obviously, we talked about Travion Henderson, who missed games. Mayan Williams missed games. The other guy we're going to talk about missed the entire season. So it kind of just got to the point where they had to give the ball to somebody, and so they gave it to the freshman, Dallin Hayden. And he took advantage. He had 102 carries for 510 yards and 5 touchdowns. Started in the playoff game against Georgia. I think he's a pretty solid running back. I'm not, super excited about Dallin Hayden as a Devy prospect. I think there's a case to talk yourself into him, but I'm not there.
To get too excited about the undersized guys.
Yeah. Well, 5'10", 205 is
Oh, I thought he
good.
was like under 200.
No. I think that Pryor is slightly, but he has a big frame. Yeah, Evan Pryor is the other guy who was the RB7 in the 2021 class, and he's the one who missed all of last year with an injury. As a true freshman in 2021, though, he had 21 carries, 98 yards, and a touchdown. He is listed at 5'11", 198, but everybody's kind of said like Pryor has the frame to put on weight. He's really fast. He's an interesting player, and like Beats are excited about him coming back, and they're like making a big deal about him being healthy again. So it sounds like he'll be in the mix. It's just interesting. It's tough to tell what's going to happen after Travion and Mayan. I think these all three are good backs, and I just think it's going to be gross. But we will talk about that one last back that we pretty kind of like here, and that is Chip Trayanum. Chip has, an interesting backstory to how he got here. He was actually the backup to Rachaad White at Arizona State, and he kind of it was like Rachaad White stayed on the field a lot. Rachaad White was really good at Arizona State, but every time he came off and like Chip Trayanum came in, he made plays. He was exciting. He was a guy that a lot of Devy people liked at running back. And then, when it was finally his turn after Rachaad White goes pro, he decides, I'm going to transfer to Ohio State and I'm going to play linebacker. And suddenly we're not excited about Chip Trayanum, the running back prospect, anymore because he's playing defense. And then last year, with all the injuries and with just Dallin Hayden left, they said, hey, can you come back and play running back? We really need some help. So he comes back and he plays running backs.
He's good.
And apparently he switched back full-time this offseason. So he is good, I think. I agree. He had 14 carries for 83 yards against Michigan last year. That was really the only game that he played. He's 5'11", 233. And really explosive for 233. I like Chip Trayanum. He's a guy who, was rostered, got dropped when he switched to linebacker, and I've picked him up in the last round of supplementals, and I kind of feel bad about it.
He's been in my queue in every one, plus like Evan Pryor's in most of them, and I always look at him and I'm like, what do I do with him? Do I burn a roster spot sitting on them for a year? I think Trayanum has more Devy value than Pryor, just by like we've seen him be good, explosiveness, workhorse size. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas Pryor has like a grievous injury and is undersized and is going to be playing behind other people, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. What the hell do you do with these guys for Devy?
I don't know. I mean,
Trayanum has no CFF value to you unless Mayan Williams or Henderson gets hurt, or probably both of them, really, for him to be like a startable asset.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. And the other thing,
good. He's good is the thing. If you put him on a different team,
fourth year now.
What?
I guess he's on his fourth year. I guess he has a COVID year, so he can come back.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think Mayan Williams has a COVID year, doesn't he? Like Mayan Williams could stay.
Mayan Williams is coming out. There's no chance Mayan Williams doesn't come out this year, in my opinion. God, yeah. I don't know what to do with those last three guys for Devy at all. I mean, I think I'd rather take my shot on Fegan than Hayden, right? Definitely in campus to Canton, where Fegan's going to dominate.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see for Devy putting Hayden ahead. Like, if both those guys graduate, does Hayden become a superstar, right? There's a world where that happens, and that makes me want to put him, higher, right? But do you think that's the case? And is it even Hayden? Is it Trinayam next year? Trayanum.
Yeah. Is it Hayden? Is it Pryor? Is it Trayanum?
It's like, what do you do? Like,
is it somebody who's not even on the team?
That was like kind of my first instinct. And then even like Mayan Williams. So Mayan Williams gets drafted, but he's gonna run like a 4.62. So how excited about him can you get for the NFL?
I'm not.
Like, I probably have him too high because at least like Barnes has some upside. Like, Barnes is fast. You know what I mean? Donaldson could be a thing. Like, it's like.
Oh, and they have the RB3 in next year's class committed.
Oh, so these guys are probably all dead, right? I mean, I'll leave it like this for now, but they're probably all dead.
I don't know. I think they're all good enough to hold them off. I don't know.
We shall see.
Yeah, we shall see for sure. But yeah, I think the big ones are Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams. Everybody's super excited about Henderson in terms of Devy, and I think that's fair. I think he's a top 5 Devy back.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be the Devy RB1 again by November, right? If he blasts off. I
doubt it.
I doubt it because I don't think they give him all the work because they want to keep him healthy.
Yeah.
That's my knock on Henderson. It's not talent. It's that I don't think we're going to see him in a workhorse role right now.
He's a little bit smaller too, eh? Oh, he's 5'10", 214. Never mind.
Yeah, dude, he's like a perfect NFL workhorse size.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. We talk about wide receivers.
I was just thinking of him in comparison to Rocket, and that's why I thought he was small. But it's just because Rocket's very large.
Yeah, Rocket's like 225 and runs the fucking 4.4. Like, I don't see. People have him as like the RB4 in the class, and I'm just like,
according to Google, Rocket is 243 pounds.
That's not true.
6'2".
He's not. He might be 6'2", but he ain't 240.
Yeah.
That's one of those like combine disappointments, right? He's going to be like 220 at 6'2".
I don't think anybody's going to be disappointed if he's not 247. I think people will be quite happy if he's not 247. Anyway, yeah, Ohio State wide receiver. Probably wide receiver U, I think, right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave all have left in the last 2 years. And they've all kind of paved the way for the guy who I think might be the best out of all of them. And that is Marvin Harrison Jr. Yes, that Marvin Harrison Jr. His dad was the all-pro wide receiver who played with Peyton Manning. He's 6'4", 205, a true outside wide receiver, alpha type, Jamar Chase level prospect, I think. One of those.
Chase.
Whoa.
As a prospect, at least. I like Marvin Harrison's tape a lot more than I liked Jamar Chase's college tape. Obviously, you can't dispute what Chase has done in the NFL, but Harrison is a better route runner than Chase was, and that's not subjective. That's he's objectively a significantly better route runner than Jamar Chase was. He's probably not as explosive as Jamar Chase was. Jamar Chase is just a fucking freak athlete, right? At the catch point, after the catch, he outperforms Marvin Harrison in that regard, but put their tape on side by side. Marvin Harrison is a savvier wide receiver and more polished than Jamar Chase was in college. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not sorry.
Sure. You think he's kind of like a Garrett Wilson player, but he's also 6'4"? That's fair to say.
I mean, to be fair. So, and I say this because I did that Emeka Ibuka video a couple weeks ago, and just watching Emeka Egbuka, who's like not a little guy, he's like 6'2", 205,
6'1",
run routes, and watching Marvin Harrison at the same time, and just the breaks and the hip sync from Marvin Harrison, he's just like a much better route runner than Egbuka, who is a decent route runner. Like Egbuka is a good route runner. Just Harrison being 2 inches taller and 10 pounds heavier was just so much more fluid at size. And then like at the catch point, it was just like, you'd see Stroud would throw up like just a Hail Mary prayer to Harrison. He's just like, doink. And then you would throw like a jump ball to Egbuka, and it would just be like.
So, yeah, just for reference, Emeka Egbuka that we're talking about is largely considered the Devy wide receiver too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. is like the guy at wide receiver, any class any class in the NCAA right now. Like, he is the guy that we want. I mean, probably he comes out this year, right? I mean, he's probably a top 4 pick, top 5 pick.
He's top 5 pick.
Like Caleb Williams and Drake May are going first, right?
Yeah.
Most likely. And then Harrison, right?
Yeah, I don't scout defensive players.
Yeah, me neither.
Right? So I don't know is there a freak edge guy that, you know what I mean? Or
tackles, I don't scout them either.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what it would be. It would be like a freak tackle, or really be an edge that you see go that high, right? But yeah, I mean, for me, it's he's the third. He might be the most talented player in the class, honestly, or second after Caleb, right? I think Marvin Harrison's a better wide receiver than Drake May is a quarterback by far. But you're just not going to take a wide receiver over a quarterback, probably, if you're trading up to that pick, right? Because you need a quarterback.
I mean, there's There's
but
a case we made
Superflex,
that he goes to.
In Superflex, all other things being equal, I would take Harrison above Drake May.
Ooh.
Yeah, easily.
Whew.
Dude, look back a couple of years at the people that went ahead of Jamar Chase in rookie drafts. And think about how dumb you feel at this point, like if you did that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I have a lot of Justin Fields shares. That feels okay now that I took ahead of him. But, like, people took Trey Lance ahead of Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I think Drake May is a better prospect than Trey Lance, but by far.
Yeah. He played against other NFL players, right? But
yes, I will not. I'm definitely never going to make a case for Marvin Harrison below 3, but
yeah,
I will pump the brakes on Marvin Harrison 2.
Well, you're just slow. I'm just ahead of you. It's okay. You'll catch up. You got time.
Speaking of guys who are trying to catch up to the person ahead of them, Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver 2 at Ohio State. He is also a true junior, just like Marvin Harrison. Also probably going to go to the draft and will likely be a first-round pick. Last season, he had 66 receptions, 1,039 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He is 6'1", 205, as we mentioned. He is more of a slot guy than Harrison, not really like the out wide type of build. He played 67% of his snaps last year in the slot. Was good for 3 yards per route run, which is insanely impressive. So, I mean, also a guy who I would definitely consider a top 5 Devy wide receiver, probably top 3. I like to be contrarian and not have him 2, but
yeah, no, I mean, you could argue Worthy over him for sure. I think there's other ways you can go with that argument too, but like, who else are you going to put above Neighbors? Branch, right? Tet McMillan, maybe. I see people put above him, but I just think Egbuka's already put it all together on film. He's already getting drafted the first-round wide receiver. So really, what are you looking for? To squeeze a little bit of additional upside by taking on more risk? Like, maybe you like Tet McMillan more, but maybe he tears his Achilles this year, right? Or like next year. He's just got a longer path to the draft.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I think there's a case for like Burden, but like you're taking exactly what you said. Like,
dude, taking Burden over Igbuka right now is like taking Quinn Ewers over Caleb Williams last year. Which I say I did that one time, and it's like haunts me. You know what I'm saying? You're taking perceived upside over a guy that's already done it and succeeded. You know, it's a little bit wacky.
yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah, and there's definitely a path where Egbuka is like a Justin Jefferson type, slot wide receiver. Because
he's as good as Jefferson, but
yeah. I like in my mind, like the case for Burden is like he can be an outside receiver who's like super athletic, like AJ Green, Julio Jones type. But like the NFL's moving away from those guys, so I think I do agree with you.
Well, my whole thing about Burden is that like I like Dominic Lovett. I think he's a day 2 wide receiver. Dominic Lovett dominated Burden this year, right? And I don't think Dominic Lovett's like a 5 Devy wide receiver, so it's tough for me. It's the same thing when people were trying to tell me Kayshon Boutte was better than Malik Neighbors last year, and I was like, why? Neighbors was clearly outproducing him on the field and outplaying him, right? And it's like, yeah, injuries, Booty, right? But like,
there's a lot to say about upside there, and like they're just different molds, and Lovett specifically is quite small.
Yeah, he's undersized. He's a slot receiver, right? I mean, what's the difference between Jacob Cowing and fucking Dominic Lovett, really? Like, one played in the SEC, but like as a player, that's the problem. I'll say Lovett is actually, I think, really good though, and he can beat man, and he has ball skills. Like he's that little guy that's a really good contested catch receiver. So I'm actually very high on Lovett. I'm like considering trying to trade for him.
We'll talk about the SEC later. Save it for Georgia. If we even get to Georgia before the season starts, because we really need
Probably not. We're going to be doing it like week 2 at this point.
Anyway, speaking of the fact that we need to keep moving, Julian Fleming is probably the 3rd wide receiver on the field for Ohio State, at least to start the season. He is 6'2", 205. Was the wide receiver 1 in the 2020 class according to 24/7. Very, very highly rated. Like in terms of just not comparing him within the class, but with other classes, he is very, very highly rated. And then he did absolutely nothing his freshman season, and did very little his sophomore season. Was absolutely overtaken by one Jackson Smith and Jigba, who was in the same class. And then last year, he was overtaken once again by Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. Fleming last season had 29 receptions, 462 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I mean, to me, he's the guy to start the season. I don't think he's the wide receiver 3 when the end of the season.
Here's the thing about Fleming. Around. I think if you put Fleming on, I don't know, Illinois or Minnesota, he's like 1,000-yard receiver this year, right? Like, he's good. He popped on film a little bit when I was watching Igbuka. He's just not a top half of the top first round NFL wide receiver, right? He's probably like I don't know. I mean, I still could see him getting drafted like relatively highly, like a top 120 pick or something.
Your case is that he's Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think he's as good as Terry McLaurin, but I just think he's better than we think he is because he's
McLaurin was
the best guy on his team.
McLaurin was never the best guy on his team too at Ohio State. I mean, like pretty much the exact same situation. Like McLaurin as a senior had 701 yards on 35 receptions. I mean, yeah, that is a quite impressive field stretcher, but that's very low volume.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that we have a expectations problem with Fleming, right? Because if you were on him as a freshman, you've just been horrendously disappointed for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
But I think he's good. So
yeah,
he's a Senior Bowl guy.
I think there are other guys at Ohio State that are better.
Yeah, me too.
One of those who is not a person that I think is better, but I should mention before we get to the freshman, is Jaden Ballard. Jaden Ballard is also at Ohio State. He went for 8 receptions, 155 yards, and a touchdown last year, I believe, as a sophomore.
Former 5-star.
He is also a former 5-star, 6'2", 196, and a year 1-0. But yeah, high level recruit. So figured we'd talk about him. And then I'm just gonna do all the freshmen together at the end. So we'll talk about tight end real quick. Cade Stover was the guy last year and will once again be the guy this year. Last year he had 35 receptions, 399 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Ohio State tight ends get drafted. Ohio State tight ends get decent CFF numbers, like 400 receiving yards for tight end is good enough. So Stover is probably going to be an NFL tight end unless he hurts himself real bad.
Yeah, I didn't know where to put him for Devy, but I mean, I don't know. He could be anywhere between Eric All and the last tight end on this list. Probably should be closer to Eric All, though, honestly.
I think I like Maryland more, but I think he gets drafted ahead of Maryland easily. But for fantasy, I like Maryland more.
Yeah. There's a good history of, Ohio State tight ends getting drafted fairly highly at this point.
But they don't do much.
No.
At least for fantasy.
I mean, that's probably who he is, right? He's
what, like Tyler Conklin-esque?
I was thinking like the kid from the Bills, but same thing, right?
Dawson Knox?
Yeah, it's an Ohio State guy.
Dawson Knox with Ole Miss. And he's way more athletic than Stover. You just can't catch.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, the freshmen. They are headlined by the wide receiver class. And the wide receiver class is headlined by Brandon Inniss and Carnell Tate. A lot of people had Inniss as the one between those two going into the, finishing out the recruiting season. But Carnell Tate has been the word around campus. He was the first freshman to get the black stripe off, which is the fancy way of saying the coaches were impressed by him, and initiated him onto the actual team. He's no longer a freshman. Kind of stupid. But Carnell Tate, is a guy who went to IMG Academy, one of the best football programs in the land. He is 6'2", 180, a little bit on the smaller side. Kind of like a CeeDee Lamb type kind of guy, a little smaller, pretty quick.
Lots of rack, right?
Just very good all around. Like, he's kind of good at everything. I do worry a little bit. I don't really see a skill that he's elite at. Like, he's not an elite jump ball guy. He's not an elite speed guy. He's not really an elite route runner, but he's just good at everything.
Yeah.
Has the possibility to be great at everything.
You know why he got his black stripe off first?
Why?
Because Inniss wasn't an early declare. It wasn't an early commitment.
It's true.
I think Inniss is better. Just honestly, his film's really, really good. Like, speaking of Garrett Wilson, that's kind of who Inniss reminds me of in his route running a little bit. Just that level of fluidity already. At a really young age, man, he's impressive.
Yeah, Inniss is 5'11", 189, clocked at 21 miles per hour.
He's only 5'11".
Yeah,
He looks bigger than that on tape.
He, as a senior, he where's he from? I don't know. It doesn't say where he's from, but he racked up 1,336 receiving yards as a senior against the 12th best strength of schedule in all of high school football. So I'm assuming he's from Texas. He is a very, very developed wide receiver. He is a very good route runner, like you said, has good burst, quick feet, creates separation, has a strong release, has enough speed to break some guys, pass some guys. Speed's not going to be his calling card, but he is fast enough. He does have steps to take. Like, he only started playing receiver full time as a senior. He played a lot of quarterback before that, a little running back. I mean, he was just kind of the all around guy. That's just kind of what you do with those high level athletes in high school football. But yeah, I think Brandon Ennis is a very good wide receiver. I think he's probably the wide receiver 3 or 4 in this freshman class. And he's a guy that I think we should be excited about for sure.
Yeah, I like both of them quite a bit, honestly. I took Carnell Tate in all my first supplementals when I had that late first round. Jonte Cook was off the board pick. I took Ennis a couple times later in the season just to make sure I had some shares, because I started to have that feeling that like I was going to really regret passing up on him after I got more into the film. I don't know what to think about Noah Rogers. I wasn't blown away by any of his film. It was good, but he kind of blended into that like next group of wide receivers for me that were like good, but nothing stuck with me that I was like, oh damn, whoa, like that cutoff for me was like really Tate. I kind of the same thing you were saying, was good at everything, but there was no wow moment in Carnell Tate's film for me either. Yeah. I was so high on him because Ohio State's so high on him, but it was like Branch, Cook, Ennis that I was just like, whoa, snap. And then Dickey was the other guy that watching this film, I was like, man, this kid is something.
Yeah, I mean, Noah Rogers, 6'2", 195, clocked at 20 miles per hour, which is barely fast enough. I mean, if that's his real speed, I'm not super excited. He does have good hands, has raw ability, makes sharp cuts. Had 1,432 yards and 22 touchdowns as a junior in high school.
A little bit productive.
Yeah, just a little bit. But yeah, I'm not sure I'm willing to bet on Noah Rogers in comparison to guys around him, like a Nathan Leacock or a Eugene Wilson.
Yeah, I like Eugene Wilson a lot. We'll get there.
Even like a Van Drevius Jacobs, like I think I'd rather kind of have. I mean, there's just a lot of guys with a lot easier paths to production than there are Noah Rogers.
I got like sometimes it's smart to take that cheap guy. Like Malik Neighbors was a cheap guy. Kobe Prentice was a cheap guy. But it's just tough to see a path to him getting on the field because like they're going to bring in 5 stars next year, right? So I don't know. I just see him as a guy that follows that like JMO path if he has the path to the NFL future. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But he doesn't have an elite calling card like JMO.
Right. Yeah. He doesn't have that kind of speed. So, I mean, that's Jaden Ballard more with the speed, right? That's the JMO path.
Yeah.
All right.
And then a couple other true freshmen at Ohio State we should talk about. The first of all is the quarterback Lincoln Kienholz. He's widely considered like the QB7. I mean, there's that first tier of 5, and then there's like Kienholz, Levitt, Avery Johnson, those type of guys. Kienholz is very athletic. I mean, he reminds me of like a guy like Kadon Salter, who is very, very athletic, makes plays with his legs, navigates the pocket, and tends to leak out and get some rushing yards. But, I mean, he was an impressive passer, too. He had 9,100 career passing yards as a 3-year starter in high school, 104 career touchdowns. He's kind of different from other quarterbacks that Ryan Day has used in the fact that he is such an athlete. I mean, Justin Fields is that kind of athlete.
Level the ball too.
Yeah. It says 11A, but I have no idea what state. But yeah, Kienholz is like kind of a Justin Fields-esque type guy in the way that he's more athletic than a guy like Kyle McCord or a guy like Devin Brown. He did play high school football in South Dakota. Yeah, so okay, that's fair. He did play a lower level competition. But yeah, I like Lincoln Kienholz. He's obviously a guy that you're probably going to have to start and wait 2 years on, unless, McCord and Devin Brown both get injured, which would suck. But yeah, I think Lincoln Kienholz is worth a shot at where he's getting drafted because he's getting drafted pretty low. You can kind of wait on him after a lot of guys who are already CFF guys only. And then there is a tight end at Ohio State that is worth talking about, and that would be Jelani Thurman, the freshman tight end at Ohio State. He is, I'm trying to find my notes on Thurman. They're not in this. Jelani Thurman. How do you feel about Jelani Thurman, the freshman tight end at Ohio State?
Is he the third tight end this year?
4-star tight end, the tight end of 3 in the 2023 class, according to 24/7.
That is
6'5", 253. Jelani Thurman, a guy who played. I really don't draft freshman tight ends unless they're
even Deuce. I didn't draft any Deuce.
I've drafted a couple. I think I drafted Pimpton a couple times and maybe Lucky once.
Yeah, Lucky I drafted a lot of just because I'm like, I don't know. If you get the next Brock Bowers, it's worth that like 4th round pick or whatever, right?
Yeah, but Thurman's a guy who played basketball and football in high school, was very good at both. He has good hands. He's very large. I mean, he has huge long arms, a huge wingspan, a great catch radius. I think he's a guy who can. Maybe be more of a pass catcher than some of the other tight ends at Ohio State have been, just because of his pure raw athleticism and just insane frame. And he's a guy who's had some good mentions from the coaching staff pretty early on. So I think Jelani Thurman, he was an early enrollee. And yeah, I think he'll be a very good college football player, if not a Devy player.
They use the tight end position. Tight end goes for 400 to 500 yards a year in the Ohio State system. So,
yeah. All right, real quick, let's look at where all of these guys. There's so many guys are ranked.
There's so much red on the board now.
Yeah, everything's red. I think personally, I have Devin Brown higher. I think I'd have him above Rising, Sanders, and Daniels.
Yeah, that's fine. I have no objection. Honestly, I liked 2 months ago. I would have had Brown over McCord, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think it's still close. I mean, yeah, even though McCord is probably winning the job, it's still probably.
I can make the argument that even though McCord wins the job this year, Devin Brown might have more upside, right? More athleticism,
more
of a dual threat guy.
You definitely can make that argument. I think my pushback would be waiting 2 years versus waiting 1.
Yeah, well, that's why. Yeah, that's why I have McCord right here. Who I didn't rank was Kienholz, but I think he'd be right behind Chiles for me, honestly. The only thing is
I have
behind Avery Johnson.
I have him ahead of Chiles.
Oh, all right, that's fair. I'll put him right behind. I like Chiles better, but my only thing about Kienholz is, does he ever get to start a game at Ohio State? Right?
Is he still a good player if he doesn't? If he goes somewhere else? I don't know.
Yes, but I guess it's for me, it's similar to the way I feel about a Lincoln Riley quarterback at this point, because they seem to be starting to be an NFL feeder school. I'm just gonna I feel like Riley can develop quarterbacks, so I'm gonna take Malachi Nelson over Dante Moore, right? Like that's how I feel about that. And at least like the Ohio State quarterback, maybe Ryan Day is not developing him that way, but the dude gets to throw to 3 NFL wide receivers every game he plays, unless something radically changes, right?
I agree, and I think that's where my point was at the beginning of the Ohio State talk with McCord. Like, this is the season with McCord where he can prove that he is a quarterback feeder to the NFL.
Right.
If he does it. So.
Right.
Yeah. Hayden Williams, yeah.
I don't know what to do with them, but I mean, I feel like Williams, he's going to the NFL. He's going to play. I just probably don't care about him for fantasy football,
Yeah, I agree.
Hayden has a chance to be something else. Hayden has a chance to be the next guy there. I could put him higher and feel okay about it, but he could also just never be anything. I mean, that's fair.
Here, I think I think personally I have Ennis, Cook, Tate, but not going to argue it. Not really sold on it.
I could argue that either way.
I like how low you put Fleming and Ballard.
Yeah. And again, I think Ballard gets drafted. I just think he gets drafted as a very situational guy. He's going to be a deep threat. Even that's like the Ohio State coaching staff said that this spring. Like they said in reference to Ballard, to be a starting wide receiver for Ohio State, you have to be able to do all of the things we expect a wide receiver to do. So Ballard has to work on some of those things, was the way they said it, right? And it's like, yigs.
I think Kyle McCord in CFF, I think that's ambitious.
You don't think he throws for 4,000 yards? I mean, I'm definitely taking him ahead of Bryn.
In C2C, yeah. In CFF?
Yes.
I think Bryn's going to throw for 4,000 yards. I think Georgia Southern's going to have 600 pass attempts, but whereas Ohio State can actually run the ball and will run the ball in late game situations.
Yeah, I mean, McCord's going to throw for like 10 yards an attempt just because of who he's throwing to.
Yeah. And if McCord is Stroud, then that's fair. But if McCord is not, like you seem to think, he's just an average quarterback who just gets the ball.
I just said he doesn't have the resume that Stroud.
Sure.
Had. Right.
I also think
I could be talked into putting him behind Finn, but if I'm drafting, I'm taking him ahead of Bryn.
I also think it's I think if you have McCord this high, it's ambitious to have Henderson and Williams this high too.
Because you think that they're gonna have.
I think we're just kind of giving them like a C2C bump, I think I think you and I have an issue where we think about CFF as half of C2C.
Yes.
Instead of just like pure CFF.
I 100% do that. I don't do enough pure CFF drafts to be anchored appropriately. You're better at it than I am, I think, but.
Yeah. Because I mean, Mayan Williams is like probably, if he's healthy, probably a 800, 900 yard rusher. And maybe he gets to like 12 touchdowns, sure, but.
Do you want to put him lower? I mean, I could see Damian Martinez outproducing him.
I mean, I can still see him. I can see him ahead of Trayshawn Ward. I don't really see him above Caleb Johnson. Yeah. And then I guess Travion's up there with like the RB2.
Actually, I'd rather have Barnes than Williams.
Ooh.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I guess Barnes had like
Barnes is the guy
Barnes had 600 rushing yards last season as a true freshman as the RB2 to Eric Gray. Now he's the RB1.
And he's going to be the RB1 this year. I don't think it's Sawchuk. I think Barnes should be way higher than he is.
I think that's fair. I think you can put him ahead of Ward. I think Barnes and Brooks are similar.
Yeah, I agree. I just feel like, yeah, Kativo could be bonkers, but I think it's exceedingly likely that Barnes is a 1,000-yard rusher this year.
We're going to have to go through all these and be like, this guy. We're going to have so many shows in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we have to do 2 a week to get through everyone, right? Like, that's what we have to do.
Maybe more than that. I don't know. I haven't done the math.
Well, we got a second one of these. We get 2 conferences, but I guess the SEC could be a lot.
Yeah. We can kind of fly through the ACC, hopefully. I don't know. We'll have to have a Riley Leonard debate. Are you excited about talking about Riley Leonard?
Do you think he's a Devy guy?
No. I don't see it.
Yeah, some people do. I like Jalen Daniels better, personally, but I can be talked into Riley Leonard.
I like Cameron Rising more.
Right? Yeah. All right. We got anything else here? We got anything else in the first half of the Big Ten?
No. Excited to talk about the second half of the Big Ten, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are no teams in the second half that we will spend, I think, 50 minutes on is what we did for Ohio State.
No, but there's some good players, and there's some teams that are a little bit fun, right? Like, to me, Wisconsin's can be a fun team.
I agree.
Pieces, different situation. Minnesota could be fun if they start throwing the ball again.
Minnesota.
Yeah, we get a few squads there that'll be fun to talk about. All right, man.
And we have Penn State.
Penn State. I do like Penn State a lot.
Yeah, we have 2 guys who will be in the top 3 at their position. So,
yeah, absolutely. All right, my friends, if you've made it here, we applaud you.
2 hours and 2 minutes of Big Ten football.
Big Ten football. I'm gonna have to cut up some clips because I think we get some good stuff in the back half that probably don't get that many people through. But the clips take work to do, and I'm lazy. So, but, if you've made it here, please subscribe to the channel so you can hear us go on at length about the remaining 2.5 conferences. And we'd love a review. Reviews would be sweet. If people left us reviews, we'd like that a lot. And that's it for me. You got any parting words, Kyle?
Big Ten sucks.
Big Ten sucks. RIP Pac-12.
They suck because they took the teams from the Pac-10 and Pac-12. And just because the SEC is better.
Yeah, I mean, all valid criticisms. All right, my friend. I am EK. For me, for Kyle, we're the Devy Dose. We're signing off.